a lot of my the tools that I fancy, a lot of the old vintage stuff that I use on my record, and on other people's records when I'm producing those. It's just good to, you know, have a retreat. I really like Williamsburg. I live in Chelsea, and coming out here is great. I get to have some wonderful Polish food and then come up here and start trying to create some new magic.
How do you how do you make sure that your professional life doesn't take over your private life?
Well, I'd like to think that I have a life. It's really easy for me to get lost in the self-importance of music and trying to create the work and get it marketed. And there's a terrible loneliness that exists if you, for me, if I want to sacrifice all for rock and roll. I just won't do it. I'm a composer, and I'm a musician, and I draw my strength and my inspiration from, you know, from everything else. The well is deep. You know, I've had a lot of love in my life, and I've had a lot of loss in my life, just like everyone else. And I got to keep the personal part of my life, the person. You know, I'm a human. What do they say? I'm a human being, not a human doing. So I have to remember that, and have to be reminded when I'm falling off into the deep end of self-importance and bullshit.
What are some of your private activities?
Well, this summer my daughter Leah is visiting me from out west, and she's 13 years old, and I wouldn't call her an activity, but when she's here I try to give her as much of my time and attention as possible, and we love to go out to Long Beach and just hang out and wave bash. And my mom lives up in Woodstock, New York, which has been my other home really since 1969 when I moved up there. And you know, I have friends and family upstate. My wife Christine and I, we get to do a fair amount of traveling together. She's British, and when we go home to visit all her friends, that's always really nice. I love movies. I spend an inordinate amount of time enjoying art films or independent films. It's one of the things that really turns me on, really makes me happy.
Let's change location too.
Okay, I'll follow you. Okay.
So just pick one up and give us the red. Maybe it's which songs you use them if you.
Yeah. Okay.
That's,
This is 1960 Gretsch Anniversary, one of the ugliest pretty guitars ever made. Gift for my wedding from my wife Christine. And God, I wish you could smell on a video. Here, you can smell this. This is truly, this smells like an old car. And this guitar was used on the song Serafina on my album Crying at the Circus. Serafina is an old Beatlesque kind of a track with all the rhythm section on one side, and then about halfway into the first chorus, the accordion enters on the left, and then this guitar with this really throaty, wonderful sound. Takes up a lot of space. Big fat guitar. Very simple. One pickup, made out of, I think it's actually some kind of plywood. Really was not the top of their line. Just a real classy kind of rockabilly guitar. This one here is nothing that you could buy in a store. This is a baritone guitar, and should really get a guitar chord. Can I get a guitar chord? This one really has to be heard to be appreciated. I'm going to get a guitar. give me a second just to plug this guy in. This is a baritone guitar. It's tuned down to A below E. It could be either tuned to B or A below E. So it's halfway between a guitar and a bass. It's not in tune, but it's got this really wonderful throaty sound. I also want to point out what I'm playing it through, because this is a very special amplifier. It's hand-built by a fellow up in Kingston, New York. It's the Tone King Imperial, and it's one of the best-sounding amplifiers anywhere. Anyone's interested in buying one should track me down, because this man makes a very special amplifier, and they're just starting to get out into the marketplace now. Builds them one at a time by hand. All right, so then next up, this is a 1966 Gretsch Nashville. Very similar to the country gentleman that you'd see George Harrison using. And just a beautiful crystal clear sounding guitar. Got a real great whammy. The baritone was used on the opening track on Crying at the Circus, which is a song called Games in the Sun. And it's really the featured instrument on that. There's no bass on that track. It's just the baritone guitar holding down the bottom. It's really, really great. This is a special edition Hofner. It looks like the regular Beatle bass that everyone's used to seeing, but the blonde ones were made with a bass boost on it, an active bass boost circuit. And this particular instrument is Hofners weren't always of the best quality. They weren't known to be like the best basses made. McCartney made them famous. This instrument has a particularly great, wonderful sustain. It's one of the good ones.
You used it on the CD?
Yeah, this one was used extensively on the CD. It was used on Serafina and quite a few other tracks. Any of the tunes where there's a really strong, bassy, kind of a woofy, sustainy sound is usually this instrument. And I produced and engineered Crying at the Circus, and I do a lot of unorthodox techniques. Standard practice for bass, for the most part, is to use a direct line, a DI. And I tend to go through big, fat bass amps, sometimes through big, like, sound reinforcement, reflex cabinets that are just putting out an enormous amount of bass, and I'll take a tube mic and put it about 3 or 4 feet away from the speaker, put it into a nice dead room, and just really tremendous bass deluxe kind of a sound, and actually try to capture the live bass presence rather than depending on electronics from outside. So yeah, the Hofners. This one's name is Marilyn, and she's a beauty. Right. I don't know if I use this instrument, but I definitely use the 12-string. Let's get that over here. It's a Martin 12-string, and has a really beautiful fine tone. On Crying at the Circus, one of the songs getting the most airplay right now is called She's Always There, and it features this guitar, played twice in this tuning, which is Dadgad. Standard Irish tuning, D-A-D, G-A-D, thus the Dadgad. Want to hear it?
Sure.
Like an angel, she is always there for me. I turn to her, I know she cares for me. I know she's always there for me. Always there for me. When I think back to the way life used to be before she came to me, her so dearly. If I turned and she was gone, I don't think I could go. I know she's always there for me. Somehow she's always there for me. She's always there.
So who is she now?
She's God. This is not, as much as it appears to be a standard love song, standard issue, she is my higher power. And if you go back and look at the lyrics, there it is. It's God as a woman, for a change. Equal time.
Okay, let's move on with the guitars. This was beautiful.
Audio balance okay on that?
Yeah.
And my wife was suggesting today that I take this to the live show. You know, that she really likes the sound of this instrument. And I was saying, it's a 12-string, it's a pain in the ass, but I'm going to take it. Because for this song, it's definitely the one to use. Yeah. Can we just take 1 second so I can get a rag and...
Sure. Okay.
Well, this is probably one of the most bizarre guitars ever made. It's a Vox Marauder, made in Italy, late 60s, I think. And this will be a piece of my next record. Crying at the Circus was done without this instrument. I don't know how I got through it without it. This is purely a gimmick guitar. It's got built-in fuzz, built-in repeat. It's like da, 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 da. It's totally whacked. It's got this this selector here that does, actually, it would be amazing if I could actually get this to work. It's battery powered, so I don't know if it'll work, but let's give it a try. Let's see what we got. this guitar is it's just one big gimmick. It's got this fuzz, then got this repeat. See if the repeat's going to work. Here's fuzz and repeat. So it starts getting interesting. Now here's a bass boost. Mid boost. So this will be fun to experiment with. I don't know if it'll ever get used, but depends on the mood.
That's wild.
Isn't that something?
That is absolutely wild.
Let's grab some water.
And maybe move the chair a little back, gives me a little more freedom to move,
Okay.
move in.
Okay.
So we talk about how it came about.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well, ready?
yeah, put the bottle down first. Like, okay.
Oh, this isn't an Evian commercial?
So how did the CD come about?
It was born out of a certain kind of a frustration. I really wanted to make a record that would last a long time. And I'd done a lot of production all through the 80s, had gained the skills of engineer and producer, having come from the music side and then wanting to really, you know, apply myself to that. And I worked with some good people, but there was a point at which I realized that I myself had something to say as a songwriter. I'd come to find songwriting to be the single most important, joyous and innocent aspect of creativity. For me at that time, it was about 1987. And it became a full-time lifestyle. Pulled away from producing other artists and just started putting together a body of work. Had a band for a couple of years called Jaguar Skies, myself and an Irish woman named Fiona Kennedy. And Fiona Kennedy eventually moved back to Ireland, couldn't handle New York and really missed home. And there I was with a body of material and no singer. Some good friends of mine suggested that I go for it, that I see what I had by way of an instrument. And that appealed to me in terms of, you know, I love going out on a limb and learning about the things that I'm capable of rather than just staying real comfortable. I'm a bass player by trade, been doing it for literally 30 years. I love playing the bass, but you know, the human voice was going to be my new instrument. I studied with someone who was really a wonderful teacher of fearlessness, a man named Gordon Cook in Woodstock, and decided to go for it. So that was 1990, and I was busy with other aspects of my life, but I knew I could. I actually isolated time in 90 and moved up to Woodstock, took a house, did a whole album, did 14 songs, and rejected all but 4 of them that are on the record. Crying at the Circus includes The News, and a song called True Belief, one called Anna Magnani. These were the songs that were the first pieces I'd ever finished where I knew I was totally happy with them, that I was going to be able to live with this as the beginning of my best foot forward. And so everything else from that point forward was about getting tracks that would sit well against these first finished pieces. And that's why it took me the 4 years. I was discovering, I was in university, I was really at, you know, I mean, I wanted to make a great record that really spoke well for the songs and for the musical community that I involved myself with. The artists on Crying at the Circus, besides myself, are just, it's a wonderful lot. We've got John Sebastian is on Anna Magnani playing harmonica, Patty Larkins playing slide guitar on She's Always There. A lot of good people. Howard Johnson, amazing world-class jazz horn player, plays on a song called The News. So for me it was about finding an alternative to trying to make a record that I, you know, by any kind of industry standards was going to be correct. I just wanted to make the record that I felt I was capable of making, and it took on a life of its own, and towards the end it really started to become much easier to get finished pieces. You know, I could make the same record, well, I could make my next record in a totally different fashion. I'm still experimenting, but in terms of, you know, what works, the kind of combination of human emotion and visual ambient kind of environments, it's clear to me now that that's my strength, and you know, I'll have plenty of opportunity to expand upon that, but at least I've got my starting point. Crying at the Circus. Buy it.
Where do you get your inspirations? I know you have a variety of record collections and different influences.
Yeah, musical inspirations, you know, my top 5 or so favorite records of all time are maybe an indication. They're all really old records. These are the records that changed my life. You know, all the Beatles stuff was very important to me. I like the White Album quite a bit because it had a lot of rough edges again. I love Supreme, John Coltrane, for its raw, emotional, just, you know, a moment that got captured that's just astounding. Sketches of Spain, Miles Davis, another one of my favorites. Good. Time out. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, we're doing a videotape, but that's all right. Yeah, feel free. We'll take a second out and... These are the neighbors from next door.
Want to take a break, or doesn't matter?
This will be cool. Water sip. Have you heard anything from DeWitt or Monica?
No, I haven't actually. I talked to DeWitt about 2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
Alrighty.
Well, my earliest inspirations were the Beatles. When they broke, I guess I was 10 years old, 1963, and had been playing for a couple of years surf music and stuff, so the Beatles were a tremendous inspiration. Then when I first moved up to Woodstock, I was hanging with all these older dudes who knew about the legacy of great American music, and they turned me on to some of my favorite records from the jazz side, Love Supreme, John Coltrane and Miles Davis, Sketches of Spain, Django Reinhardt, all that great stuff. And also I started playing a lot of R&B. I really, as an electric bass player, which was my main gig, we used to call it Fender bass player, as a Fender player. Duck Dunn, you know, from Booker T and the MGs was a tremendous inspiration. Whoever the hell was playing bass on all those James Brown records, I used to play along with those. McCartney, James Jamerson from the Motown sound. these were really strong influences. When I started to learn to play jazz, I studied with Dave Holland and Eddie Gomez, two world-class upright players. And this is the instrument that I purchased at that time when I started studying upright as a new instrument, having, you know, played the bass guitar for many years. And I never really mastered the upright. I love this instrument, and I respect it, and I hire other guys to play on dates that I produce. I don't call myself an upright player, but I can't quite bring myself to let go of it. So it's part of the family. I've had this instrument for 22 years. Got it in '71.
What are some of your new influences?
Well, even my new influences are old dudes. I really like Tom Waits. Some of my new influences, this is like starting around 1987, 88, I got introduced to Irish music. And that really brought me back online as a fan. I mean, I was, you know, losing it as like Mr. Professional, analyzing, scrutinizing, and never really fully appreciating the stuff as a fan, you know, that was out there. And there's a group called Clannad, or Clannad, however you might pronounce it, that I was introduced to. Christy Moore, who doesn't write so much as he does sing, amazingly. Some old fuddy-duddies like Macon and Clancy, the Chieftains. For me, that music had a tremendous amount of magic, and it really just got me back online as a big fan of music. I really like Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush and all the people that employ mystery, Robbie Robertson. You know, I like being in, Caetano Velosa, amazing Brazilian guitarist. Fairly esoteric, and not really that many people that are like out today that I'm like super aware of. I'm waiting for people like you to introduce me to what's out there. I kind of operate in a little bit of a vacuum or a void of contemporary music, and I kind of like it that way. But
is there a reason why you avoid it?
I don't actually consciously avoid it. I just, you know, I'm not a fan of top 40 or whatever you call that now, the contemporary hit radio. I have no problem with it. It's just not what I'm looking for in music. And my life has become more a combination of, you know, being out there doing the things that I do. And then when I do come to look at music, it's usually, I listen to all these old records and discover stuff I'd never heard before. And when I'm sitting with an instrument or trying to evolve a song lyrically, it's a private adventure. It's really not an extension of being on a circuit with other groups. You know, this is my substitution for LSD. I don't do drugs, but I do music. And I don't do it so much, I mean, I don't do it in isolation. The people that are on my record are, you know, I mean, yeah, I love Patty Larkin, The Story. They're on Elektra Records. They're amazingly melodic. These are contemporary artists that are working now. Just to come back to the question, I really like John Hyatt. I like Richard Thompson. You know, a lot of old dudes, man. I like music that speaks to me in Technicolor, that really just takes me away. And I'm sure that there's some new stuff that would do that for me, and like, I'm serious, you know. I'm always asking friends, like, make me a tape of something new I can wrap my head around. I'm hungry for it.
When you write your music, how would you describe painting, writing, painting?
Yeah, the process for me of recording is, for the writing and recording process, it's really, it's mystical. I have to admit that I go in with a very unconscious approach. The songwriting is a separate thing. I don't write tracks. You know, it's a big part of contemporary records is you do a track and then you put some lyrics to it, and that's totally cool, but it's not what I fancy. So song gets written and it's got a potential to become a record, but how it gets to its final form, there have been songs that I've cut where I've put it into 4 or 5 different musical environments before I finally felt like it had found a home. You know, and it's not a new technique. Again, with the Beatles, if you read their complete diaries, that was their standard procedure. They just hack something out there and, you know, go for the inspiration, and if it sucked, it sucked. And if you listen to any of the bootlegs and all that stuff that's out there, a lot of it sucked. And on the other side of that kind of risk-taking, potentially, depending on a lot of other things, potentially is something really special. So
how would you describe the if you put the songs in different environments, is it?
yeah.
How would you describe those different environments?
Okay. Well, for instance, the song Anna Magnani, I wrote that in one style, and I use a sequencer often, at least for Crying at the Circus. I did about a year's worth of workshopping at home, just using the sequencer to create these musical surrounds that I could get into. Magnani was a reggae tune, and pseudo-reggae tune, and it had this kind of a beat going for it, and it worked. And I laid it down that way, and put quite a bit of effort into it. And then one night I was playing the acoustic guitar, and I found I had it tuned funny, which is something I do often. In this case, I dropped the B string to A, and had the capo on, and all of a sudden there were these chords, and it worked with the music I'd been doing, but it was a whole other environment. So I played the acoustic guitar with this reggae track in the background, but I just played long notes, and then I pulled the reggae track out altogether and re-sang the song, put a kind of a McCartney-esque kind of a bass in it, put this baritone guitar in there, had John Sebastian in on harmonica, and created this much more kind of very esoteric folk track. And then when that comes to the end of the second verse, I brought up 20 faders worth of the reggae track, and this whole other thing begins, which really was present on the tape from the beginning. I just kept it off, and that's where I introduced Anna Magnani's recorded soundbite, for lack of a better word, from the Fellini film, and used the reggae track as a background to her really emotive crying and screaming to her lover on the phone part of the song. So, you know, it's the evolution is osmosis, I think is what you call it, you know, where you get to a certain point and then what you have in front of you leads you to the next level of the song. And that's not always the case. If it was, it would drive me mad. But, you know, every once in a while I start a song and it gets finished that way and it was right on target. But I'm not afraid to say I'm wrong, you know, that this is not the way it's going to be on the record. If I have to put some time into a track in order to reject it, to discover that the song isn't worthy of being on the record, I wanted an album that was 12 songs deep, and I rejected quite a bit of material. I know that's a luxury, but because I use all this weird old vintage gear and own a lot of my own equipment that practically is steam powered, I mean, I'm in possession of some pretty wicked tools. You know, as an artist, this is an artist's studio, you know, and artists lock themselves away and they do their work until they get something they think they want to show to someone else. And I just didn't see why I shouldn't allow myself that kind of development. And, you know, not to scare any people from the industry away. I can do tracks as economically as the next guy, but it's because I've invested a lot of my earnings over the years in having that package that allows me to do it. You know, first things first, get the work done, get it done to the point where you really feel strong about it, and then bring it out and let the industry and the machine try to market it. Crying at the Circus has been received extremely well at radio. I've gotten massive positive response at radio, and now we're trying to turn that into some record sales. That's a whole other story. And if I can get the record company to get the records into the stores, we might actually sell a few of them.
What is some of the outboard gear behind you you're using?
Okay. All right. Again, first things first. This device right here is a microphone preamplifier made by Telefunken. and it was used for originally for German broadcast. Has about 7 tubes in it, weighs about 20 pounds. It's massively overbuilt German technology. And it's the same microphone preamplifier used on all the Beatle recordings. At EMI, they had these custom-made EMI consoles, and they stuck these into the trays. What a mic preamplifier does is it takes the microphone signal, you sing into a microphone, what's coming out the cord is at a tiny amount of electrical current, and it needs to be boosted way up. So that's the first and only necessary stage of amplification. And it really makes a vital difference in the sound. If you listen to like old Nat King Cole records or old Beatle records, they seem so in your face, so completely musically present. And that's the highest order of tube technology. A lot of the new stuff that's sold today is really good. A lot of the new tube gear is good, but it's not over-designed like that. So this is my front end for a lot of stuff, my mic pre. This is an equalizer I got in England that was built by the engineers at Decca Records. These are not available. They're one of a kind, in this case 2 of a kind. And they're incredibly musical sounding, hand-built for the final mastering. I use them for individual instrument EQ. And then down here are a pair of, some people would call them boat anchors. I call them really valuable tools. This is an RCA BA6A, and it's every Jimmy Page record you've ever heard, any track with him on it, he owns 8 of these. And they have an amazing sustain and a tremendous amount of warmth, and it's like when you think tube gear, I mean this is as good as it gets. And this thing here is made by CBS, and it was meant for broadcast. It's a leveler. It keeps everything at maximum in-your-face volume, and it has like a 10-second release time. So if you play a guitar note, the meter just goes like this, comes down real slow, and you get sustain that whole time. So this is the stuff that I fancy using. I do a lot of my recording onto a tape format that was dropped in the late 60s, 16-track 2-inch, which is still for discerning recording people like Bruce Swedien, who does all the work with Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones. These kind of high-end California guys have never lost track of the fact that the best analog recording format ever made was 2-inch 16-track. And I have a machine named Bessie, which is a 1974 MCI with, they call all discrete electronics, no chips, all separate components, and record straight from the Telefunken through the RCA and the Decca onto Bessie, and on the production work that I do for other people. It's not the only reason they hire me, but one of the reasons that I get hired is that I do recordings that really they're really rich and very present, and it's really easy to actually get a great sound if you take all that crap out of the line, all the super quantity of electronics that most people put between their microphone and their tape machine.
Wow.
Getting a little...
We've got a lot of things here.
Cool. Yeah, I think this will be more interesting to people than a lot of adjunct questions about the artwork and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. We never talked about the video.
Okay, let's talk about the video.
Let's move your chair just slightly.
Okay.
I don't know where to.
Want me to hold my upright bass?
Yeah. So, Lloyd, tell us about your video.
Well, I was doing...
One sec. I'm running out of battery.
Okay.
Just start it to light. tell us about your video?
No. When Crying at the Circus was finished, and it was about to hit the marketplace, I had a discussion with a friend of mine named Birgit Stout. Birgit is a filmmaker from Germany with just an amazing talent, a wonderful musician as well. And she and I went up and had a long cup of coffee and talked about what we didn't like about music videos and what we loved about film and what we thought was this whole other world of collaborations between filmmakers and musicians. And she studied my record and thought that the song Competition would be the perfect vehicle for her. And I asked her to make a short film that would be a statement unto itself, and that's what my video is. It's at the final stages of editing, and we need to go back online, but it was shot. She created a series of events and kind of Fellini-esque get-togethers and taped many, many hours. It was done on videotape, on a micro budget. But she worked very skillfully with her partner, who's a painter, Jorg, and they created something that the first time you see it, you kind of say, huh? But something about it makes you want to look at it again, and then you start to see the connections between the music and the picture as being on a much more subconscious level. And it's, it's a really cool piece of work. I hope that we can get it out there to see if, it's an avant-garde video is what it is. And she did a great job, I think.
Do you study any instruments?
I don't study formally now. The last instrument I studied was voice with Gordon back in 1990. What I do is I do a lot of workshopping, a lot of guitar detuning, a lot of experimentation with taking away all of the crutches. Put your fingers in a normal position on one of my tunings and it sounds like hell on earth. And so I do a lot of workshopping to create tonalities on the guitar. I've been doing a lot of work with Garth Hudson from the band, the keyboardist from the band, and he helped me pick out an amazing Lowry tube organ, a theater organ. And so I'm more discovering textures available to me on strange esoteric keyboards and fine-tuning some of these instruments and my relationship to them. I do have a guitar in my hand a lot, and my musicianship is really important to me, but formal study hasn't been a part of my life for a while.
Okay. What I would like you to do is take a guitar
Yeah.
and
Break it up against the wall and talk about the Who.
when you purchase or when you look at a new guitar, what
Yeah.
you're looking for. There's certain criteria as it would be a good one.
Okay. Let me get this one actually plugged in. ice cream truck is interesting. He's playing Send in the Clowns. I wish I had a tape machine going right now. Actually, maybe let's walk over to this window. Let me just get a little bit of this on this, and I'll. Whoops. Whoops. This is how we destroy all the guitars. Let's unplug this.
Okay.
Cool. Sorry to waste videotape on an audio recording, but that was... Maybe you can take a look at the numbers so I can come back and actually listen to the to see if that's in any way. It's such a bizarre thing for an ice cream truck song.
To use.
Send in the Clouds. All right, well, with this instrument, when I bought it, this was the first, oh wow, look at the bridge. Poor thing. This was the first instrument I ever bought that was a proper collectible, I guess, and it was fairly expensive. Got it down in Florida from a guy who's really knowledgeable and wasn't into rip-off prices, so. The Gretsch sound is this really beautiful, clear, bell-like tone at its best. Or you can get these really bassy tones out of this thing. It has a dullness switch, something that you don't find on too many guitars. And you flip this thing and it gets really dull. Or another kind of dullness here. Another thing Gretches are really great for is if you're into palming. What I look for in an instrument is personality. Each one of these instruments has such a radically different sound. This one here, this is like perhaps closer to the top of their line, the orange one. But this little green meanie is the bottom of their line. Oh, it's totally out of tune. But this thing's... It's just totally not assuming. It's got a... It's kind of, you can hear the depth of the body itself in the tone. And it's just, again, it smells amazing. This is an instrument I bought for its smell, probably.
So basically, you pick them by personality, the character.
Yeah, they speak to me. You know, I love old cars and I love old guitars. And I just think that there's a, you know, some of the instruments don't sound nearly as good when you first get them because they've not been picked up and played on a regular basis. and they've been sitting on a wall in a music store or whatever, or in a case under a bed for years and years and years. But you know, if you play any instrument and you start really pouring a lot of your own love and musical energy into it, it'll start to just kind of readjust and settle in. And so it's like with a friend, you know, you meet the person, you're attracted to them, but you don't really know where it's going to go. You just go on instinct that there's a relationship to be formed. And you know, if your instincts are to be trusted, then you end up with a lot of good friends over time. And guitars aren't a replacement for friends, but there is that similarity where you got to trust your instincts when you pick one up and you say, I think this one's going to be for me.
You don't find new guitars that have that same character, or?
I'm sure that there are. I just haven't really been in the market for them. When you do get a new guitar, I think there's a break-in period. Definitely, you have to be willing to invest the time in getting it to, you know, to get set up and to really respond to your playing. You know, as a musician, I'm more a composing musician, not as in songwriting, but I really love the process of, you know, putting down something, maybe acoustic guitar and vocal with a little drum machine or whatnot, and then sitting and kind of workshopping and putting the capo on the instrument and trying, you know, different fingerings and different tunings and different tonalities, different amplifiers. I don't sit there with all these guitars. These are just out for show. I instinctively will reach for a certain instrument, a certain amplifier, microphone, preamplifier. There's probably 10 or 12 things that make up the signal path from the instrument to the tape deck. But I've been doing this for a while, and I find that my first guesses are often correct. Or let's just say that they're good enough for rock and roll. You know, I managed to get the stuff sounding really good on tape. I work as fast as anyone I know. I mean, I'll spend never more than 5 minutes getting a sound. And I've gotten a lot of compliments for the sound of Crying at the Circus. You know, it's a really, really good sounding record, and I just produced Jonathan Edwards' new record. Again, that's got really rich sounds, musically appropriate sounds. You know, for me, a producer's job is not getting the sound per se. It's one small part of the job. Very hands-on. I'm really into the, you know, the whole concept of arranging and bringing things to life, you know, in an interesting kind of left field approach wherever possible. And but it's nice to have the tools where you really feel confident and feel like they're not there to slow you down or to create distraction, but just to get you onto tape in one piece, you know.
Hmm.